presentation, The History of American Music, presented by Denny Chambers. From the slave ships to the 1970 popular music scene, a look at the origins and influences that created the purely American origins of spirituals, gospel, camp town folk, blues, ragtime, jazz, big band, rock and roll, and pop. Denny began her career as a professional singer-musician in 1971. She has been an opening act for the Supremes, Kingston Trio, and Denny Doherty of the Mamas and the Papas. She received a BS and a master's degree in music education. She has lectured for the New York State Music Association on vocal timbre around the world, and written, produced, and directed 3 musicals. She's been a music educator in public schools for over 20 years, and she conducted the Lake Chapala Chorale for 2 seasons. Please join me in welcoming Denny. Take me a second to get you back up here. I disrupted her placement. Kind of cleaned up my mess. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming this sunny morning. Okay. So I used to do something similar to my 8th graders in public school. And you know what they say, we're all in 8th grade here in Lake Chapala. Okay. Music is a living, breathing thing. It is impacted and influenced by its environment, both natural, political, and historical. The timelines of who invaded who explored where, changes and mixes culture to reflect that. Cultures like that, whether it's clothing, language, music, food, or art. Who here saw the movie Amadeus about Mozart? Okay. Do you remember when the soprano enters Salieri's salon for her music lesson and she is dressed in a gown with Turkish influences? She said, "Oh, it's all the rage. Do you like it?" And that was because there was a war around that time between the Habsburgs and the Ottoman Empire, circa 1780s. The Turkish Wars, they were called, and hence influenced the fashion then. When the Portuguese sailors landed in the Hawaiian Islands, they brought a Portuguese mandolin, which later became the ukulele. The umpa, beat and brass instruments traditionally played in Mexican mariachi and la banda, comes from the influx of German immigrants who fled to Mexico before and after the war. So even in the modern genre of la banda, you hear for the bass line, it's a tuba. And that is why. In the musical world, we call this musicology or ethnomusicology. And so it was in the early days of colonization of the United States, a melting pot. The slave ships arrived from parts of Africa, usually Western, and they were ordered not to carry or bring their drums. They were stripped of many things and put to work in the southern territories. We all know this. Equipped with an ancient oral tradition and a rich musical and dance tradition, they looked for creative outlets. First of which would be the field hollers that were created. Guess where? In the fields. The first attempts of work song. Call and answer was utilized for this. Hey there, how'd you pickin' fine? And then, to lighten the workload, they created songs, work songs. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of hay. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of cotton. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of hay. my musical classes, I used to play this recording of an African postal station. And they were just, doing all this rhythm and whistling. What would happen if we did it in America? Well, you know what happened in the postal stations of America. But anyway, all right. You all may know this one. Deo, me say Deo. Daylight come and we want to go home. Deo, me say Deo. Daylight come and we want to go home. That's the Banana Boat song when they're bringing at night, I guess, bringing the bananas home. Next came the genre known as spirituals. When Christianity was introduced to the slaves, the hymns influenced these song forms. The suffering and the laments were disguised in celestial imagery. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over yonder, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming to me, coming for to carry me home. I got shoes, you got shoes, all God's children got shoes. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my shoes, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, walk all over God's heaven. Apparently he didn't have shoes, so he was dreaming of having shoes. And the Camptown songs, who knows what Camptown songs or what Camptowns were? No? Okay. If you had a really nice master, you would be allowed as a slave to go down to the river on Saturday night after all the work was done. And they would put up these tents, and they would have all this kind of personal time to make music and things. So this kind of sounds, this song that I'm going to sing a little bit of, sounds like early reggae to me because of the offbeat. Camptown ladies sing their song, doo-dah, doo-dah. Now ladies sing their song, oh doo-dah day. Gonna run all night, gonna run all day. Put my money in a bobtail nag, somebody bet on the bay. Yeah, that's it, see, you know that. And then there was the need for more personal expression of that sorrow and loss. And that was the blues. Musicologists say that the European or particularly the Irish or English airs or melodies melded and developed with the slow, hot southern rhythms. This created the first version of the blues. Iambic pentameter and blue notes. Blue notes are kind of not right on the pitch, but kind of moving around a little bit below or above. And you know what iambic pentameter is? I hate to see the evening sun go down. I hate to see the evening sun go down. So, African music is full of polyrhythms. My speaker's not working, so.
Oh, down below.
Where is it?
There it is.
Here? Yeah. Well, there's a will, there's a way. sliding up and down. That was called Creole Nights. New Orleans. Okay. The exotic influences of American culture brought spice and intrigue to the European culture. Case in point, European marching. Straight to the beat. Right on it. Africans marching. So there's a lot of syncopation and kind of messing around with the beat. And so in the music. In the blues genre, men seeking jobs in the more liberal sociological climate after the emancipation, they moved up north and changed the music of Southern blues. The rhythms got faster with the colder climes and the bigger cities. The blues forms like Chicago, Piedmont, Memphis developed. Jazz and blues music became more complex and rhythmically as the century turned. We had ragtime, stride piano, honky-tonk, roadhouse shuffle, and I was going to play some of that. Actually, Don was going to play some ragtime for you, but the plug isn't working. So here's Muddy Waters. Now this is South. That's Muddy Waters. He was a very famous, y'all know Muddy Waters. The Lomax brothers actually went down with their little recorder in the field where he was working and recorded his story and his music and kind of archived Southern blues. So, the development of the railway systems facilitated cultural exposure, brothels, riverboats, taverns, saloons, P.T. Barnum's circus, theaters, created social opportunities for creative and artistic development. This is when the melting pot began to sizzle. About late 1800s. Jazz developed north and south. New Orleans, Dixieland, Kansas City, Chicago swing, bop to cool, big band. Smaller bands emphasizing dance, music, in contrast to listening. A friend of mine told me that he saw an interview with Artie Shaw and Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson asked Artie Shaw, you all know Artie Shaw, big band leader, very famous. They said, you know, you were 60 when you retired and you stopped. Now you're 90. Why did you stop? He goes, I couldn't stand them dancing to my music. So diatonic or chromatic influences, let us not forget political influences. Racism affected jazz, the development of jazz music. The anger and frustration experienced every day by the African American musicians pushed rhythmic and harmonic limits. Bebop is an example of this. Bebop was strongly influenced by the struggle for equality with African Americans. For me, it's a challenge to listen to it because the frustration and anger is palpable. When I met Dizzy Gillespie backstage in the elevator of Avery Fisher Hall in New York City, it was apparent his disdain for me. He just looked at a Caucasian woman working in the inner sanctum of his jazz concert with other jazz greats. I was Jerry Mulligan's personal assistant and music librarian and tour manager. That was my job when I was in college. So I met a lot of jazz greats. But Dizzy and Oscar Peterson, you could tell they were still recovering from all the horrible inequality they had to endure. This is, how many know who Jerry Mulligan is? The Canadians will know, and the jazz musicians will know. But most Americans don't know because he was American, and Americans don't have a real understanding or appreciation even of jazz music. Most jazz musicians had to go to Europe in order to perform and feel, appreciated. And all the Europeans and the Canadians and people in Japan know jazz music. But Americans, we don't know our own jazz musician. Here's an example of Jerry Mulligan. He was the father of cool jazz, which was in the, I would say, the 80s. But Miles Davis got the credit for it, and I think he named one of his albums Cool Jazz, but Miles Davis had nothing to do with cool jazz, naming it or developing it. But he dropped into one of Jerry Mulligan's 10-tet rehearsals in Manhattan, and he just stood at the doorway and he said, "Oh, cool jazz." Walked out, and then he got all the credit for it. It's weird. But anyway, that's the way things happen in showbiz. But let me digress to something that was a total surprise to me. We were not taught about how Native Americans influenced American music. Native American southern tribes had African slaves. The Native American influence on early blues and jazz and then rock and roll should not be ignored, but it has been ignored and hidden from history books. Apparently, many slaves who escaped plantations before the emancipation fled to Indian reservations where they blended in and integrated into their culture. But the 5 southern tribes held slaves for hundreds of years. Initially, slaves were, if a tribe member died, they would take a slave and integrate them into this family structure or the role in the tribe that this deceased person had, and the slave would, replace them. So, of course, there was a lot of commingling. There was some Native American Thomas Jefferson's in there. And they commingled with Indian blood. The Africans adopted and integrated Native American beats. The simple 4-on-4 in early rock, blues, and rock and roll seems to me Native American in origin instead of the polyrhythmic African syncopation. The lilt and cry of blue notes and jazz vocals could be Native American in origin. No doubt influenced by birdsong, animal vocalizations, and the natural world. If you see the way they dance, Native American dancing and African, it's like a bird. They would watch the birds and they would, like the roosters doing that stomping thing, and they would imitate. And so, of course, I think that the singers would emulate and copy the bird songs. So these multi-racial people moved to New Orleans, blended right in, and helped create these authentic, original American sounds. Robbie Robertson of the band, do you know him? Mm-hmm. He is Native American. And when he and Bob Dylan first had this very unusual rock and roll sound, and they went to Europe, people were throwing tomatoes at them. They were so shocked in the 60s that what is this? And it took them a long time to become accepted because it was so different. And we don't like differences, do we? So, I saw a documentary that Robbie Robertson did on this very subject. And he played a recording of a Native American blues singer who apparently precursed and influenced early African American singers such as Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, etc. Again, we haven't been told about this. It's been hidden from us. So the sorrows and the struggles, art and uniqueness of both of these cultures created the roots of blues, jazz, rock and roll. Think of Jimi Hendrix. I'm going to play a little bit of a native Indian band. Nope. Wait a minute. Yeah. This is a Native American. Gary, equal these 4, 2, 3, 4.
Too many teardrops for one heart to carry on. You're way on top now since you left me. You're always happy.
I was asked to be on a recording of the Miccosukee brothers, the Tiger brothers, the Miccosukee tribe down in Miami. We did their advertising, and so they asked me to, be on their recording. And it was just Indian rock stuff, just like this. So if you think of the innovation of Jimi Hendrix, he did things that nobody else did, melodically and rhythmically and everything else. He was half Cherokee and half African American. Authentic, original. America, a mixture of immigrants, natives, and slaves. A melting pot not only of people, but of music too. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Should we just get up and dance? Okay, the way questions work, raise your hand, I bring the mic, you stand up, you talk into the mic, you don't pontificate, you ask questions. Or I kick your ass.
I've enjoyed this, thank you very
Put
much.
it to your mouth.
Oops, okay, can you hear me? Thank you. You mentioned Jimi Hendrix. Do you have anything of his to play? I'm trying to hear him in my
I
ear.
can look it up. I almost did that this morning. I can do it right now. I saw him in, this mic on? In San Diego. He did the Star Spangled Banner with his teeth. Oh. Yeah.
Den, I want you to sing.
Sing
You
what?
don't, you don't, anything.
All right.
We have a number of musicians here, we can just pretend we're, no, you just do your thing, really.
You want me to sing
Anything.
Cry Me a River? I was going to do Cry Me a River. I don't know where it went. All right, give me an A minor chord. B. Where's my? All right. Now you say you're sorry for being so untrue. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you. I was mainly a jazz singer, even though I did show bands when I was in my 20s. Oh, did you do the math? 1970? Okay. All right, let me search for little. What did Jimmy give me? A Purple Haze. Perfect. Was that him or was that Prince?
That's Prince. Purple Rain. Jimi Hendrix is Purple Haze.
Okay. Just making sure. Okay. Search. No, I don't want to list. I want to search. Okay. Purple. Haze. Yeah, that was his signature song, wasn't it?
Yep.
There we go. Not by Jay. Yeah. Just as another aside about Jimi Hendrix, you know, he was really, and my friends know that I have issues sometimes with rock and roll lead guitarists. I call them roosters, if they have that kind of personality, which I've met like 2,000 of them. But anyway, Jimi Hendrix was a real gentleman. He respected women. He, in fact, his recording studio in Manhattan, Electra Ladyland, after his song, it was all very Venusian, you know, rounded desks, which is, you know, feminine. And he just really, you know, he always respected women. He didn't treat them like roosters do. Yes.
We have a question back here.
Yeah.
Okay, just thinking aloud, and a question. I once was on the my Wi-Fi, and I heard this song, and I paused. Oh, I like that song a lot, and it played it. And then I thought about it after it ended, and it played that same song again, but in a different rendition. Once, and I found out this radio station, this is genre, music genre. It played one song, 365. How many can, if you think you know the song, yell it out. What song? What song?
Imagine.
No.
Imagine.
What is it?
Imagine.
No. Amazing Grace.
Oh, wow, that's in churches
Different
too.
ways, and it was quite remarkable. Backpacked and so on. Thought I'd
All
share that part.
denominations. Yeah, that's a spiritual. And gospel, by the way, just got more piano and more rhythm than spirituals. I forgot to mention that.
Two questions.
Yeah.
First of all, can you talk about the development of Latin jazz, a little bit of its history? And then secondly, since we're in Mexico, I know of two giants of American Canadian jazz who lived and died in Mexico, and I wonder if you could add to this list of important jazz musicians who have some connection to Mexico. And that's Charles Mingus, the bass player, and the great Canadian composer Gil Evans, both lived and died in Cuernavaca. Do you know any other artists that are specifically connected to Mexico?
No, but I know Jerry Mulligan, you know, he had his quartet, he had his tentet through his career, and he had a whole scores made for symphonic orchestra, where he had Barry with symphonic orchestra and quartet with symphonic orchestra, and he went all over the world. I played with Stan Getz a lot. He went down to Brazil a lot, because if you're an authentic jazz musician, you're going to have a Brazilian album. And he went down quite a bit to Brazil. You know that Brazil imported more slaves than the United States? Yeah.
Portugal.
From Portugal.
Yeah, they were Portuguese.
The Portuguese ships brought them over.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, well, that's why they speak Portuguese down there. But, so, to talk about Latin jazz, I mean, that came from the slaves, the ones that arrived in the islands, you know, all the islands, Jamaica and all of the islands have African slaves, and so that impacted their music, their regular music, native music, with jazz. And let's see, I don't know anybody in Mexico particularly, but I know that Jerry went down to Brazil a lot. And I don't know. Yeah.
You have a question back there?
There's a guy from my hometown by the name of Oscar Peterson. Do you have any comments?
I think he's a tremendous musician. I think he's an incredible pianist and composer. Personally, I got really bad vibes from him, because I think when I met him, because he just was, you know, really angry, and you know, I look really Caucasian, let's face it. So he didn't look you know, he did the same thing Dizzy did, which was, but I think he's brilliant. Yeah, I think he had a lot of problems personally, a lot of health issues, a lot of marital problems, but he was brilliant, brilliant guy. Yeah.
Not a question, but a comment. I've worked with you in several bands, and if you ever see
my buddy Wayne Watson, let's give him a hand. Great jazz trumpeter.
if you ever see her listed on something to go see her, because
Who?
you.
Oh.
Go see her, because she's a lot of talent.
Yeah, I occasionally perform around here. I'm trying to be retired. But I have had Wayne and I had a jazz band at the Avocado Club, which is now San Vito. But I'll probably do something, you know, every once in a while.
Hi, this probably isn't part of your presentation, but you didn't mention anything about how music evolved into rap and some of the more modern.
Oh, I can tell you about that. I can tell you all about that. Okay, there's two components to that. There is a figure in African culture, and they're called the griot. Griot, and I think you pronounce it griot. And in probably now and forever in their culture, they would have this guy who would go from village to village, kind of like a European troubadour, only he would go into the villages and then he'd go to the next one, a wandering minstrel, and he would not only bring songs, but he would talk stories. He would tell who had a baby where and what was going on in the next town. And, you know, they used to communicate with drums. You could tell what was going on in the other village, whether they were going to war or not with drums. But this guy actually was a librarian, and he would speak poetry. And it would be rhythmic, because he's African, you know. So he would do this thing, and so it's in that culture about the spoken word, rhythmically done. And when in New York City, when the school system stopped music in the schools, there was a big hole in these guys from the ghetto. They didn't know what to, you know, they would be saved by going to the band room after high school or whatever. They didn't know what to do with themselves, so they went home, and their tenement houses, they'd hang out of the windows, and they could hear each other, I guess, and they would start with the turntables first, and then it became more of a spoken word, and it's very competitive in nature, so they would be always, you know, fighting with each other, and that's how we got rats.
Can you say a little bit more about rock and roll? It's me.
Oh,
A little bit more about rock and roll, the Beatles, Rolling Stones. What do you, like, pairing them up with who they're drawing from in music?
oh well, yeah, when I did the explanation of the talk, I didn't know I thought it was going to be 30 minutes, so I had to like stop my rock and roll thing. But basically, if you hear Mick Jagger talk or Paul McCartney, they always had a Southern blues, whether it was Robert Johnson or Muddy Waters, or I can't think of anybody else right now, but who's this guy I did a recording of? T.J. Walker, T-Bone Walker. And anyway, so they were all influenced by that. And of course, they're all from Britain. But, you know, with the onset of recordings and everything, which happened in happened in the late 40s, but they could hear, you know, they didn't have to visit like the Lomax brothers, musicologists, did to go down and sit in the fields with Muddy Waters. They had the recordings. So that's what I've heard, you know. I'm not an expert on the Beatles, but the one thing I can say about the Beatles is they were like a rocket. Their music was so different, and it was kind-hearted. You know, it was innocent, because the personalities there were different than the Mick Jagger and those guys. But they looked to classical music. And my manager told me, and I have never really investigated this, but he told me that the reason that the Beatles' music was so different was because they were making melodies out of bass lines, which is kind of innovative. I never have sat down and studied that, but you know, and Bach, they took from Bach, and yeah. So, anything else you want to know?
Anybody else? There's a great documentary on Muscle Shoals that really explains rock and the Southern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad they're doing all that.
So you want to sing a little bit more? You've got a little time, or we can stop.
What would you like me to sing?
Anything you want.
Yeah.
Unless you want somebody to call out songs.
Perish the thought. And that's really a guitar song?
Yeah.
You want me to emulate a guitar, electric? No. Okay, so. I'll do a song that Wayne and I do a lot. It's called Worrisome Heart. It's by Melody Gardot. And she's actually, I think she's Canadian, but she lives in New York City. Anyway, so, thank you. I need a man with some heart. Should have brought your trumpet. I need a man with a worrisome heart. I would be lucky to find me a man who'll take me the way that I am with this worrisome heart. Oh yeah. I need a hand with my troubling ways. I need a hand with my troubling ways. I would be lucky to find me a man take me the way that I am with this worrisome heart.
My part.
I need a man who's got no baggage to claim. I need a man who's got no baggage to claim. I would be lucky to find me a man who'll take me the way that I am. Worrisome, troubling, baggage-free, modern-day man. I want a worrisome, trouble-free, baggage-free, modern-day man. Worrisome, trouble, baggage-free, modern-day man who will take me the way that I am.